So the tools for this job, you're going to need obviously a new CV joint, breaker bar. That's I attached this pole to my breaker bar to give me the leverage to get off one of the nuts. You'll need a 32 millimeter socket along with 12, a 15, and a 19. This 19 has to be the 12-point socket. There's no way that, yeah, some of the bolts on there, 2 bolts, require the 19. And then a hammer. I was able to use this little one, probably a bigger one would be a little better. And then just a little size 8 socket. In order for me to get off my rotor, I needed to have this little puller to extract the rotor. On my rear rotors, I didn't need it, but these hadn't been changed in 19 years. So in order to get this one off, I needed that. So, and then the most important tool in the whole world you'll need is kind of like a propane or butane torch. That's you can heat up the locking nut, which is the 32. That was the only way that I could get it off, is by heating it. And then I think that's about all the tools that you'll need in order to replace your CV joint. And then also this video will show you how to take off the caliper, the mounting bracket, the rotor, and also the wheel bearing housing. So if you need to replace any of those, show you how to do it. I'm going to be showing you how to replace a CV joint on a Land Rover Discovery Series 2. First thing you're going to want to do is pop off this little cap, and you'll see a little nut in there. It's got a locking nut, so there's this little tab right in here, right there, that you need to pry open. And once you pry it back, then that's the locking section. And then you can undo this nut. It's easier to leave the tire on there, that way you can get enough leverage. And then you can loosen the nut. It's a size 32. You put it on there, and I already loosened it, but you're gonna need a big breaker bar. That's about how big mine was. And then I had that little bar on it, and the only way that I was able to loosen it was with my little blowtorch. So I heated up the nut for a little bit and then put the whole thing on it, and I was able to get it to come loose. So that's the first step, is it's a good trick to leave the tire on. The 32 bolt or size nut is just fits just right, so you can use that. And then you take off the tire, and then we'll get to the inside of it. So I was able to take the tire off, and you can see the locking nut with the tab that you gotta undo. It's torqued pretty high, like 350 foot-pounds or something, so yeah, you're gonna want to heat it up to make sure you get it off. The next step's pretty easy. You're gonna want to take off the brake caliper. There are 2 bolts, one right here and one right here, and they're both 12 millimeter. And then you can take off the brake caliper, and then we need to take off the holding arm after that, and then we can take off the whole rotor, and then that'll let us get pretty close to the CV joint. So I was able to take off the brake caliper, and I just tucked it up right here. You can see that I made sure to be careful about bending the hose, but yeah, you can tuck it up and kind of hang it on to that. And then there are 2 screws, so then you need to take this bracket off in order to take the rotor off. And so there are 2 screws. I loosened them already. You can see one right here, and then one right here. You'll need a 12-point socket. Looks like that. and it's a 19mm to get them off, and with the big bar I was able to get it loose pretty easy. And then yeah, you can just loosen them, and then you should be able to take that off pretty easy. And this comes off. And then to get the rotor off, there is this little screw right here, and it's just to set it so that you get the rotor on in the right spot. And sometimes they're kind of a pain to get off. You want to be careful not to strip the screw. I'm just using a flathead, but it's a big Phillips. Yeah, sometimes they're a pain, and I've almost stripped one before, so, but it just depends. So just be careful with it. And then sometimes the rotor's stuck on there pretty hard, so it depends if you've ever done this before. You know, it's an old Land Rover, so everything's kind of rusted. So if you give it some taps with the hammer, it can loosen up. So I'll kind of work on it for a minute and see if I can loosen it up. Alright, I finally got the rotor loose. It took me a couple hours. Kind of embarrassing. So what I did is I had to use this propane torch, and I heated it up kind of like around each of the studs where it makes contact, and I heated it up for, I don't know, I'd play a song, and it was about 3 minutes at a time, and then I'd hit it with the hammer, kind of knock it loose a little bit. It wasn't really working, so I had to go and rent one of these pullers. I went to AutoZone, and they make you leave a deposit, and then once you return the item, then they refund your deposit. So I used that, and after I was finally able to attach it around the rotor and to get it enough to pop loose, and then I was able to wiggle it until it comes off. So okay, you'll once you got the rotor off, you'll want to take off the heat shield, and you do so by just loosening 3 screws. Right here, here, and there's one down here that I took out already. And then you'll be able to take out the hub, the wheel bearing hub. And once you get that off, there will be 4 screws, one right here, one right here, and one right on the other side. You get to them from behind. Let's see if I can turn on the flashlight. You get to them from back here. You can see the screw, or yeah, 4 screws. Once you get that off, then you should be able to take off the CV joint from there. So let's see how tough they are. So I took out the bolt back here. That one wouldn't come all the way out, so I just I could turn the steering wheel and get it out, but if you need to turn the steering wheel to get to a bolt, then you know it's a good idea. And then just proceeded to do pretty much the same thing with the rotor to get it off, except that you don't have to worry about ruining the rotor or ruining the wheel bearing hub. You can just hit it a couple times with the hammer. Mine was on there really good, so I did use the puller for a little bit, but mostly the hammer worked really well for me. And then once I got it open a little bit, I was able to spray some penetrating oil in there, and then yeah, still getting pretty close. So I finally got it loosened, and I took off the nut. I took it off, And then I was able to slide the wheel bearing housing, the wheel bearing hub, just completely off, and then I tucked it away because there's this little wire right here. And then when I pulled it out, the force, since I left the nut on there, the force was able to pull out the CV joint. So should come all the way clean. And then you set that aside and get our new one ready. Well, here's my new one. I ordered it online, probably like 50 bucks. To put it in, you don't need to put in any grease or any oil on it, as far as I know. You just put it back in. If a lot of oil came out of your housing when you pull it out, then it'd be good to top it off. But as far as I know, should be good to go. When you slide it in there, you just kind of rotate it until you can feel it click, and you're good to go. So let's see. So I was able to slide it back in. I was having a little trouble. It was probably about this far out, and it wasn't going in. But as long as I just made sure to keep twisting it until it was able to go in, and now it's you can tell that it's sat in there pretty well. It made a clicking, and it went probably like 4 inches, however long that is for the other side. Just be careful of this wire. This is for your speed sensor. I accidentally knocked the whole hub off on the ground and pulled the whole thing. So make sure that you got enough slack in case that happens. I'm not too worried because on mine the 3 Migos are on, and I probably should replace the speed sensor. Well, I should replace the whole hub. While I'm doing this, I just didn't think that far ahead. Well, I did. I didn't want to buy the part and then have maybe the 3 Migos not turn off. So, you know, that's how it goes. But yeah, so that's that. We'll just go in reverse order to put everything back on, starting with the hub, and then we should be good to go. So I got the hub back on.